Well, welcome to the path forward. Current situation. It is Monday, July 27th, and the drama in the Senate continues. My phone blew up on Saturday morning. Um, got a bunch of questions about, hey, sir, did the NDA pass? I'm like, no, they didn't vote on it yesterday. So the theatrics and the drama continues. And then over the weekend, Mike Lee and Scott and a few others said that they were going to contest taking the Senate on recess. Blah blah blah. It's all drama in Kabuki theater, as far as I'm concerned. I care less about it when I walk away from it than I do when I'm reading it, because it's all noise and BS. Just like most of the any of the midterm races, it's all noise. Like this clown Tallarico down in Texas. This guy doesn't know. He doesn't know if he's fighting fucking or on fire. His campaign is all over the map, and the more extreme and the more to the left he goes, the more absurd the things that are coming out of his mouth. And then you have Ted Cruz on the other side, who's so pro-Israel that they make the perfect analogy for what's wrong with our entire election system. It's not just the voting or the voting machines. It's the fact that the only candidates that are put in front of us are the absolute worst of the worst, that are both owned by the same people, and that's the illusion of choice. And at the end of the day, they install whoever they want to install and give you the illusion that your vote counts. I was doing a show this morning. I did Tommy's podcast this morning with Watkins and General Holt, and the first part of the show, which kind of shocked me, was Watkins was talking about the roundtable that we do every Thursday, right? She's like, those guys can go and disagree, but they're respectful about disagreements. And I'm like, yeah, our rules of engagement are agree to disagree and then commit, which means this behind you is about, and I got a lot of questions about that. Why do you have one team, one fight when your show is called The Path Forward? It's really simple. We're all on the same team. All of us. We all want our country back. Everybody wants to live their life. They don't want to be hassled by the government. They want to deal with any of the child trafficking. They definitely don't want to deal with any of the criminality and the fraud. They want to get back to a trust-based society. So it doesn't matter what side of the aisle you're on. I guarantee you that there's a lot of liberals out there, because I've had conversations with them, that feel exactly the same way you do. They want their country back. They want to go back to their lives. And they all say the same thing. Nobody crosses the aisle, which is true. But now everybody's seeing the fact that the entire system is compromised to the point that there's no reforming this system. Let me just put that out there. There's no reforming this system, no matter what you do. The system attracts sociopaths and psychopaths, and it's run and manipulated by sociopaths and psychopaths. And during that conversation this morning, Watkins brought up the voting machines, which I had forgotten about. Again, you process through so much of this stuff that you forget all of these things as you discover them. And in 2021, when I started Telegram, maybe it was 21 or 22, I did a deep dive on the machines. And when the audit was going on, I was looking at all of the information that Cyber Ninjas was uncovering. I wasn't seeing it real time, but I saw it close enough to real time to where I saw what they saw. And both Cyber Ninjas, and there's several of us that reviewed that information, we all saw the same thing: multiple operating systems, right? That in a security business, when you see multiple operating systems, it's like red flags, red bells, sirens everywhere, because it tells you that the operating system that's presented to the user is not actually running the show. It's the operating system in the background. And if you've ever run VMware or Boot Camp or any other tools that you use for either Mac or Linux or Windows, where you instantiate another operating system that sits over your core operating system, what it does is You can do anything you want in the operating system up front, but it doesn't have control of the kernel. Doesn't have control of the firmware. It's just an instantiation. It's just basically it's for show. You can do some powerful things with it, but you don't have control of the firmware. And you can't patch that, right? You can't patch it so that the operating system that's presented to the user is the one that's always in control. You just can't. And I know there's a lot of tech guys that will disagree with me, but trust me when I say this, I have seen workarounds to where it looks like they patched something, but they really didn't. So the software in and of itself should be null and void in the machines too. But Watkins said during the call, which I'd forgotten about, that these machines were made by the same company that makes gambling machines in Vegas. And I'm like, there you go. You enter, you put your ballot in, you pull the handle, and we'll see what the one-armed bandit gives you. It's amazing to watch. It's when you hear this stuff, you have to put it in the context of just how much of a clown show this is. And for somebody like Brian Krebs to go out in front of the public and say this was the most secure election in history, after knowing that these machines were made by a company that makes gambling machines, and the software was made, let's just say the software was made in the US and exported to Venezuela, which was exported to Poland, which was exported to probably Czechoslovakia, which was exported somewhere else and then manipulated by people in Italy and a few other places. You can see what a clown show the whole voting system is if the software and the hardware are both manipulated. And for, I said this on the show, right? For Trump to actually follow through, what he should have done, and I've said this before, is he should have done the speech and then high-powered people should have been arrested. Because look, those machines didn't show up by themselves. Somebody facilitated those machines being adopted across the country. Somebody facilitated the certification of them. Somebody facilitated the false, or let's just say incomplete testing of those systems. And none of those people have been held to account. And it's state by state, right? The Secretary of State is supposed to be the one that certifies the voting system and the machines and everything else. Well, in 2020, Katie Hobbs was the Secretary of State, and it just so happens that she was absent the day that they certified the machines. Are you seeing a pattern here? They give you the best of the worst, or the worst of the worst, or the worst of the best of the worst, or the best of the worst of the worst. And that's your candidate pool. So they rig it there. Then they rig the software. So they rig it there. Then they rig the hardware. So they rig it there. Then they rig the paper ballots and the mail-in ballots. So they got you 5 ways from Sunday. And we run the fairest and the cleanest elections on the planet. Sure, I'm buying that. And we got into a little bit about, a little bit of a disagreement on the show, which I shut down on Thursday, because there's 2 trains of thought right now, right? Train of thought one is we can't give a vote to the enemy, so we need to keep voting and keep participating in the system, even though we know it's flawed. On the other side, it's why are we continuing to participate in a system that's rigged beyond any kind of fairness? And you can make an argument for both. But at the end of the day, the point still remains that for the system to be refreshed, or for the system to be, I guess the best way to put it, for the system to be even remotely trustable by the public, you have to revamp all of it. And it's the how do you get there? That's the part that most people have a problem with, right? Because we all think, just burn it to the ground and we'll start over. And the reality is, you can do one of 2 things, right? You can do the whole burn it to the ground thing. It's always an option. It's always on the table. It's always an option. I would submit to you that I think this is going to happen organically versus functionally, because the system is, so many people distrust the system as it is, that they're not willing to trust anything the government says at this point. And we talked about the whole IRS thing, and we talked about a number of other things. But I see three very dangerous narratives right now. The first one is that governments, by and large, in and of themselves, are all corrupt, so we need a different form of governance, right? And you can say that's the one world government thing. You can say that's the oligarchs trying to take over. Doesn't matter what the mechanism is. What matters is that narrative is out there. And that's why the Democratic Socialists, and aka the CIA, aka MI6, aka CCP, that's a narrative that it resonates with the younger class, right? With the younger generations, because they've been fucked over 4 or 5 times, right? First, they got fucked over with their education. They took $100+ grand in debt. Then they got fucked over in the economy where they couldn't afford to buy anything, and they couldn't afford to buy a house, start a family. Then they got fucked over in their careers because of DEI, and DEI has basically made sure that no white person, especially a white person over 40, is going to get hired anywhere. And then they got fucked over by the bank rates, which prohibits them from even, basically getting into an apartment without a roommate. So they're looking for something different. Not all of them. A lot of them are just trying to figure out how to operate in the system that's in front of them. But most of them are trying to figure out what's a better system than this, right? So you enter the Democratic Socialists. And by the way, all this bullshit was architected by the elites and the political elites. Mike Johnson posted something this morning about communism versus common sense. Okay, that's bullshit. And that's the dumbest thing I've heard from that little turd goblin. But it shows you how disconnected from reality they are, right? He's such a sociopath and a narcissist that he has no concept of what he just said to his entire base. And I'm sure his base is eroding right before his feet. I mean, talk about burning the bridge you're standing on with a blowtorch. Say something stupid like that. First of all, they all knew that the Democratic Socialists were making their moves in blue states. I mean, how long has AOC been in office? You're telling me that none of those retards figured out that she was Democratic Socialists of America, aka CIA, like Slocum and a few others? You didn't figure out that she was CIA, and now you're gonna play the game and the drama of common sense and capitalism versus communism. That's all contrived nonsense. Every bit of it. Let me go back to something so this puts it, I can put it into context for everybody. Cindy McCain, shortly after John McCain's death, Cindy McCain was interviewed, and she was asked about Epstein. And she said, everybody knew what he was doing. Let me say it again. Everybody knew what he was doing. That means everybody in DC, and I've said this before, and it's worth saying this again. Everybody that was in office in 2008 knew who Barack Obama was. They knew who his handler was. They knew what he was there to do, and none of them stood up. And now you're telling me that Mike Johnson's going to come out and change his story and say, we're going to fight communism, when he knows that AOC and Ilhan Omar and Rashida Tlaib and all the rest of the squad, which are all Bolsheviks, by the way, they're actually just actresses. They're CIA hired actresses is really what they are. Same with Lauren Boebert, and her past is really interesting. She was an escort. Then she met Ted Cruz. Then she was in the house, and Ted Cruz sponsored her. I mean, you can't make this stuff up. But the CIA is really behind the DSA, and the CCP is behind that too. And you can look at all of the connections between them, and you can see that this is just a script they're playing out. Like this Mandami guy. This guy was friends with Epstein and the Clintons. I don't need to say any more than that. You already know that's a stinky pile of fraudulent dog shit. So you don't have to go any farther than that to think, okay, this guy's probably a plant. And the same thing here. Today, one of the headlines is that Andy Biggs accuses Katie Hobbs of pay-to-play scheme. Okay, she's being investigated for that. By who, I don't know. But you know how that is, ongoing investigation, it goes on and on and on and never comes to a conclusion. But the theatrics around all of these midterm elections is just that, it's theatrics. Nobody's going to be held accountable. Nobody's going to be arrested. Nobody's going to get rolled up. We're going to get into October. They're going to do the October surprise where they drop some bombshell on the candidate they don't want. They're going to feign that it's so close. It's such a close race. It's really, really tight. The polling shows it's really close. And then they install who they want. It was so close. And then the loser will go out and go, we almost had him. We'll get him next time. Same shit over, over, and over. And, I could sit here and make predictions, but I got out of that game in 2022 because I was wildly unsuccessful at it. So I'm just going to say this. You're going to see a bunch of noise. Then you're going to see an October surprise. Then you're going to see a bunch more noise. Then we're going to do the election, and it's going to be back to business as usual. And I don't care which side of the fence wins, left, right, doesn't matter. They're all Republicrats. None of them there's no left and right. There's no Democrat or Republican. There's just the haves and the have-nots. And right now the haves are blatantly throwing it in your face that they're going to install whoever they want. Look at the Thomas Massey race. You think that was real? That was all fiction. That was nonsense. I mean, they put such a shrub in to replace him. They couldn't even garner with payments enough people to be excited to go to his congratulation party and sustain it for longer than like 45 minutes. It was a ghost town because nobody voted for the guy. But yet he won the primary. He's going to go on to the election, and he's going to do great things with no charisma, no message, no plan. And oh, by the way, he's really boring to listen to. So this should be really, really awesome. He's the designated loser. Again, they bet on both ponies, right out of Pawns in the Game. I mean, look, if you read Pawns in the Game, you look back and you think, why didn't I see this stuff on my own? And I knew a lot of this stuff after being in DC and seeing a lot of the debauchery myself and seeing just how corrupt they all are. I mean, this was back in 2009, 2010. And it was so corrupt back then, and we were in the middle of a war. It was so corrupt back then. I was just like, my God, these people are all moralist scumbags, all of them. And I walked away from there with a firm, realistic view about politics. I looked at it, and I got some good advice from one of the general officers I worked with. He was, because trust me, I was in his office. I jumped in his ass with both feet about why we didn't bring the brigades into DC and start rolling people up, especially when Obama was in town. I wanted to arrest that son of a bitch more than I wanted to see him go on trial. And we went back and forth about public opinion. He's like, well, the public opinion's not there. I'm like, show him the fucking doomsday tapes. Show them what these people do. Show them what they do to children. Problem solved. Galvanized. And if we would have done it back then, the public wouldn't. It's 5 stages of grief, right? Denial, anger, blah, blah, blah. They'd have gotten to it, right? But it was the anger stage that everybody's worried about. It's the anger stage when people go off the reservation. And my answer to that was, look, half of the country's angry all the time anyway. There's not going to really be much of a difference. And this shit's going to go kinetic anyway. Let's just get on with it. What are we waiting for? And now look at where we are. It's so blatantly obvious that the political system, the election system, the judicial system, definitely the law enforcement branch is completely useless. And then you have the legislative and the executive branch. And, we talked about data centers this morning. Well, General Holt did. I don't know how much of that I believe. I don't know how much I'm going to continue to believe of that, Because in my mind, if Trump signs the NDAA law with 219 in it, all that narrative's out the window. So we'll see. I haven't seen anything today that says it was signed or it was voted on. It's just it's the theatrics and the the cartwheels around keeping the Senate open. I don't see anything. But all of those branches are completely non-functional. And then that was the first narrative, right? The first narrative that I saw, it's really dangerous, is that governments in and of themselves are inherently corrupt and you can't trust them. So we need a different form of government. The other one is this whole trans movement, that we should embrace trans and AI and chips in our heads and all that. And that's dangerous too. Right. And then the third one is that we can't allow this to go into civil war or revolution. Yeah. The other one I heard is reconciliation. Those people that really pushed the jab in COVID, they really thought they were doing the right thing. They really believed in the data and science, and we shouldn't hold them accountable. Nope. You all hang. All of you hang. You all go to Gitmo. You all toss salad. You all embrace the suck. You go to Gitmo. Sorry. Don't have any. I don't want to hear that. And I was watching Mike Benz talk about Fauci and gain of function and Daszak and the rest of those malcontents. And this is why I say we don't have a functioning law enforcement. Is why is Anthony Fauci still walking around when it is proven that this guy not only lied to Congress, lied to the American people, he pushed a drug he knew caused death and illness. They pushed a vaccine that they created themselves in a lab. And I said this before, and it's finally been proven. That fucking virus went from Fort Detrick to Canada to Wuhan. And I said that in 2020. Somebody said, it came out of a wet market in Wuhan. I'm like, that's horseshit. That came out of Fort Detrick. It went to Canada, then it went to China, and then they brought it back. And that's exactly what they did. So anybody that says that they didn't do that is either retarded or stupid, because that whole line of shit was so obviously false when he said it the first time, along with the whole mask thing. I'm like, this is unbelievably corrupt. And get away from Trump still touting warp speed. The whole agenda needs to be exposed to the American people. Who was the belly buttons behind it? Who was the ones that supported it? What did Trump know? What didn't Trump know? And then let the American public decide. I guarantee you it is not going to work out in Trump's favor when people find out he knew more than he was telling us. And I don't want to see another Senate hearing where they refer somebody for criminal charges and nothing happens to them. Don't even, if you know that Fauci's not going to be arrested because Todd Blanche told you he wasn't going to prosecute him, don't waste our time, right? Just go out, parade in front of the cameras, stomp and yell and have your tantrum and say the FBI isn't doing their job, because we all know that. And until we disband the FBI, the CIA, IRS, DIA, and all the rest of these useless organizations, nothing's going to happen. And, I had an interesting conversation Saturday morning. And part of the conversation was, we were talking about data centers. And I was saying, look, I don't know how much of this data center stuff is real. I know they're building data centers at breakneck paces. And I said, I don't get it. I said, and what started it was this executive order that Trump said that all data centers are military operations, meaning they're under federal control. And I was told a week ago, Monday, that was going to be the case. And I was just waiting to see if he was going to actually do it. And he did it. And so, I asked my friend, I'm like, hey, is there something we don't know that we need to get ready for? He goes, oh, yeah. Yeah, the AI threat's real. And it's not just real here. The AI autonomous threat is real. because China and Russia are working at a breakneck pace to get the same thing. And when you look at those two countries and you look at how they develop weapons, there's no soul attached to it. There's no moral compass. It's just about stone cold killing. And think about autonomous vehicles with no shutdown code or no ability to be interdicted by whoever created them. That's a very dangerous proposition. And we're in those waters right now. So I don't know what the drive is for all the data centers. I definitely think they want to build a digital prison. I definitely think the intelligence agencies are involved. But I also get this strong sense in my gut that this whole plan is going to fall apart because it's too complex. And that when it does, we're going to get some unintended disclosures that are going to wake everybody up and galvanize the public. And people, you need to stop thinking about we're going to deal with this kinetically. Like we're going to go blow up data centers. Like you don't need to blow up data centers to completely bring the system to its knees. If we bring this country full stop, and I mean full stop, you shut down all the commerce, you shut down all the travel, you shut down business, I guarantee you it will get their attention in 24 hours. You won't need to go longer than 3 or 4 days, and they will get the message. So my point is there's a lot of ways to bring a system to its knees without having to fire a shot. And most people are worried about, well, because this was the messaging from the truckers in Canada. They went up there, they peacefully protested. The public was starting to rally around them. So they had to do something about it. So what did they do? They made examples of them, took away their bank accounts, took away their livelihoods. This is why we do this show, because you don't need all of those systems in place to maintain your life. You need those systems in place to maintain your luxuries and your comfort, but you can live without them. You can live without a paper dollar. You can trade without a paper dollar. You can conduct commerce without a paper dollar or without a digital dollar. It's just we've been trained that we have to have all these systems in order for us to survive, like electricity. You can live without electricity. It will suck, but you can do it. And if you talk to any of the veterans, right, anybody that went to Iraq, whatever you took over there, that's what you had on your back. You didn't have anything else. Yeah, you got resupplied. But the difference was you had what you had. And until you get resupplied, guess what? You had what you had. And you can survive without all these modern luxuries. And it's the comfort that the ease and the comfort that lures you in and sucks you in. You could barter for anything. And that's why this is where I depart from the whole prepper community. I don't believe in that scenario where it's going to be just you and your family and you're going to reconnoiter from place to place and survive off the land. That's all horseshit. That's all bullshit. You had 330 million people fighting for the same resources. How do you think that's going to work out? And oh, by the way, you're going to be fighting roaming packs of thugs because, the criminal element, they're like cockroaches. They survive any calamity and they're able to thrive. You're going to evade them. You're going to live off the land and take care of your kids all by yourself. What happens if you get sick? You get fucked. You're fucked. That's what happens. You get sick, you get cancer. Guess what? You're fucked. So that's the whole point of it, right? Is to you build a resilient community so that the community supports each other and is self-sustaining. This whole lone wolf thing, that's a bunch of horse shit. None of that's real. It's never been real in history. How many lone wolves do you know that we still talk about in history that actually built oh, that's right. You can't build a civilization by yourself. You see my point? It's a stupid mindset. Yeah, there's probably going to be times where you have to survive, escape, and evade, but you're always going to go somewhere to meet someone or other people. That's how the game's played. So all this nonsense that you're going to be, escape and evasion and breaking in doors. First of all, If you're kicking doors in, things are really bad. And your face can't send bullets, but it can take them. So good luck with that. Let me know how that works out for you. All of that mindset is, it's one, is self-defeating, and two, it doesn't build community. Right now, the thing we all should be doing is building communities, strong communities that are resilient and they're completely immune to the bullshit. Because not only does the individual need to develop antibodies to bullshit and lies, so does the community. You should have an early warning system. Somebody walks in the community that doesn't belong there, and you should be able to sniff out if they're a Fed or an insurgent or whatever else they are. And you can sniff them out. So, and by the way, Troop and I did a show on Saturday called Bag of Guns on Rumble. Fast forward through the first 28 minutes, because again, our 30 minutes of cursory IT setup, literally, to get the mics to work right. I figured out it was the USB port on the laptop was shut off for whatever reason, so the mic wasn't even getting any power anyway. So it is what it is. So if you watch that video, I break apart the SIG and walk through the SIG. I don't know what you call it, fire control group. I don't know what that mess is, all those parts. And I'm a gunsmith, and I can't explain to you what they all do. I'm looking at it going, but this makes no sense whatsoever. This is not field serviceable. And then I took apart his Glock. Got his Glock back together. Glocks are so similar. I don't like the sights on Glocks, but I like the fact that Glock's simplicity and reliability. So walk through that. Walk through holsters. He talked through AR stuff. He talked through rifle stuff. Yeah, that whole SIG thing, what a mess, man. I looked at that, was like, by the way, it was the first time I took a 320 apart. And I was like, this thing is a mess. Who thought this was a good idea? Whoever designed this needs to be fired and never work in the firearm industry again. This is a mess. And I get why they did certain parts of it. Like Troop pulled his another 320 apart and pulled the trigger group out of it, which really, that's the firearm, right? And it's got this really complex, really parts heavy, metal framed trigger group, which, yeah, again, not field serviceable. I mean, maybe they design it so it can be dirty and you can throw it in the mud and pull it out and rinse it off and it's going to be fine. Maybe, I don't know. But yeah, I see part of the reason why they did what they did, but trying to get that fire control group back in the frickin', the trigger group back into the lower receiver part of that was fun. I mean, it's got this little lip that you have to drive it in. It's got to go in a certain way, and then it's got to fit in a certain. Yeah, you're not doing that in the middle of the field. That's not coming apart. I'll tell you, I'd throw it away, empty it, throw it away. Okay, the enemy can have it. They can have at it. Let it discharge on them. So, yeah, just bad design, terrible design. So that's my opinion. Talked a little bit about triggers and we talked about ARs. But anyway, the key element here is fast forward 28 minutes in, and then the mics will start working again, and we recap everything because we're the Department of Redundancy department. We like to be redundant about redundant things. So there's that. Got some questions about the Substack links for the ham radio stuff. I spent most of the morning after I did Tommy's show trying to put together a list for the bug out bag stuff. I'm going to put a link to it on Substack, but it's going to actually be on the website, the Murray Media Group website. It's in the show notes. If it's not, I'll make sure it is. But I'm going to put the links out there so you can go out and hit those links. And as of Friday, I have 3 affiliates, so you'll see me starting tomorrow doing some advertising. One of them is actually a product that I actually have every so often. I don't have it all the time anymore. It's called Strong Coffee. If you go out to Strong Coffee and you use the code ONETEAM, It takes 20% off. So that's one of the affiliates. And anyway, I'll say more about it tomorrow. But the links actually, well, the code actually works, which is cool. And it's coffee with collagen and a few others. I was buying it, but I switch back and forth. So I think I have 2 bags of it still in there. It's pouches. It's instant coffee. It's cool though. So give it a try. It helps the show. So there's that. As far as videos go, I do have one other that Troop and I will do. I'm taking a different laptop next time though, so I'm not going through this shit again. We'll do a show on programming radios, the two of us, and he can talk through deep radio stuff, and I'll talk to high level stuff. And by the way, somebody asked me, why are you doing the high level and Troop's doing the detail stuff? Because it's a good mix, right? He can do the deep dive on some of these topics where I can't. He's focused on the practical stuff of things you should and shouldn't have in your kit. And it's geared towards the average person, right? I keep saying this and it bears repeating. This whole channel is not dedicated to the hua Green Beret, Delta Force guys. Those guys know how to do this, right? It's Joe House Mom that doesn't know how to do this. And I don't like the word prepping, because prepping is a stupid word. I like the word contingency planning, because you're planning for contingencies. You're not planning for, the end of the world. And nobody can plan for that. And even if you did, you're not really going to get a say in it if it's some cataclysmic Earth level extinction event. Sorry, you're going to be riding the wave like everybody else and hoping for the best. So that whole mindset just floors me. But here's my advice for the next 2 weeks. Don't take anything at face value. Apply the 48-hour rule to whatever you see in the news cycle, especially politics, because it's your first instinct and the last thing should be, this is horseshit. This is all a lie. And then move forward from there and wait 48 hours to see how things develop. And then you'll probably get to, a third of the truth. But don't take anything at face value. And don't assume that if, and this is, I don't listen to influencers anymore, meaning I don't look at these, like, I'll give you a case in point. Sean Ryan was on Tucker Carlson, and Tucker Carlson's dad was CIA. Sean Ryan was CIA. So are those guys, are they an op? Are they real? I don't know. I've been told by people very close to Sean that he's the real thing and that he's a real dude and he doesn't like the CIA. Okay. These are guys I know and trust. And these are guys that know him. So I don't know. Just like all these other influencers, I don't know. I don't know if they're real, if they're paid, if they're not paid, whatever. Right? The ones that are easy to spot, Laura Loomer and all the rest of them that are clearly MI6 and Mossad assets, Ben Shapiro. Yeah, same thing. Like, it should tell you something when Ben Shapiro goes on his podcast and says Section 219 isn't a big deal. Okay, it's a big deal. Just reverse whatever he says and you make your decision from there. But those are the easy ones, right? It's the hard ones. It's all the other influencers out there that are on Twitter and on Instagram and on YouTube that you don't know. So don't take anything at face value. Give it 48 hours, see how things go, and away you go. So yeah, there's that. Last but not least, I'll be back tomorrow. We'll see what happens over the next 24 hours. Pretty much end of day there, so I doubt it's going to happen today if it hasn't. But if you're not starting to build communities, that's what you should be doing right now, is building communities. So focus on doing practical things that support post, grid down, whatever. And don't get wrapped up in the details of the daily message, because that's all it is. And we'll see how things develop. I'll see you tomorrow. Be back at 1 o'clock tomorrow. Until then, God bless. One team, one fight.